In this episode, we take a look at more of my cinematic heroes from the 1980s. So, stick around. Hello, fellow dorks and dorkettes, and welcome to Sentimental. This is the show where I just talk about things that are bumping around in my head and I need to get them out there. These are things from my childhood that I just want to have a conversation about. Now, the first episode in this little mini-series, if you will, was on a nostalgia syndrome. And as someone pointed out in the comments, that it probably would have been better fit for the sentimentals. Now, little sidebar, I have a hard time pronouncing that word. I hope you all know what I mean. I've gotten grief about it in the past. But anyway, since this is just conversations about my childhood and what these people meant to me, these heroes of the silver screen, and how I emulated them or dressed up as them for Halloween or just ran around the backyard pretending to be them, that kind of fits more of the sentimental aesthetic, if you will. Nostalgia syndrome is more of just, hey, here's some things from the 80s. While this is more of, this was me from the 80s. So anyway, all that out of the way, let's get on with things, shall we? In the first episode, we looked at people from Perseus from Clash of the Titans all the way to John Matrix from the Commando movie. Now, this list will be pretty much of the same. A little bit of everything. But, I mean, they're all pretty much action-adventure characters. So, without further ado, let's kick things off with number one. And this is probably a biggie on a lot of people's lists. Luke Skywalker. Now, this is Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi. Maybe it was my age that I could appreciate the character more, that I could appreciate being a Jedi more, but this was the movie where Luke Skywalker spoke to me. This was, I mean, everything from pointing at a Gamorrean guard and choking him out to the final climactic lightsaber battle versus Darth Vader. Now, I got to dress up as Luke Skywalker one Halloween. Easy costume, honestly. I mean, it was just probably black sweatpants, a black shirt, and this brown cloak that my mom made for me. She sewed up for me. And if you saw the episode of Toys I Wish I Would Have Had as a Kid, the more recent one, you will see that I didn't have a lightsaber, so I was just a dude in black with a brown cloak. That could have been anybody. I mean, so as far as Halloween costume go, cool costume, but just needed that extra accessory. Still great though, still have fond memories of it. But anyway, Luke Skywalker was the quintessential hero for a lot of us 80s kids growing up. I mean, he was a character that we saw from A New Hope all the way up to Return of the Jedi grow and change and become the hero that we all wished we could be. I mean, he was just a farm boy on the moisture farm to fighting Darth Vader hand to hand and winning. And of course, with Empire Strikes Back, we saw him fight Darth Vader and lose, which was probably more of a building process for us as kids watching it, and for the character of Luke Skywalker himself. I mean, that he had to fall before he could run, for all intents and purposes. Now, fast forward to just recently, in the season finale of The Mandalorian, spoiler alert, that he makes his return. And as soon as I saw that cloak, I knew who it was. I mean, a lot of people knew who it was by seeing the X-Wing, but no. When I saw that cloak, I knew exactly who it was because that's who I was one Halloween. that same cloak, that black outfit. I don't even remember if I had a glove on. I probably had just a winter glove on or something to emulate that shot that he took in the hand. But anyway, Halloween aside, this was a character that I pretended to be running around in the backyard. Sans lightsaber, so I had to use a stick most of the time. And, stick, chop on some trees, yeah. Stick breaks apart, you grab another one. So if I did have a lightsaber, I'd probably bust it up really good. But that's not the point. I wanted a lightsaber, I needed a lightsaber. I never had a lightsaber. Anyway, he's number one on the list. In a lot of lists of mine. Luke Skywalker, number one. Number two is Flash Gordon from the movie Flash Gordon from 1980. Now, ironically enough, I saw Flash Gordon on VHS on Halloween for the first time before going out trick-or-treating as Perseus. Weird, I know. But Flash Gordon in that movie, I mean, he was awesome. He got thrust into all these different situations and always came out on top. I mean, even faking his death with Ming's daughter and everything. I mean, the dude could not do any wrong. He kept coming up roses no matter what situation he was in. To a kid, that's what a hero was. I mean, he was brash and boisterous and didn't take crap from anybody. As a kid, that spoke to us because as kids we're meek and weak and wanting those situations where we can rise above. Flash Gordon did that time and time again in that movie. I can remember running around the backyard pretending that there were Hawkmen around and going, dive! As I would just run around and, have laser guns and whatever. I mean, even he had a sword at the end. That big golden one of Ming's. I mean, it was ornate and looked really weird. But still, he had a sword too. All the cool people had swords, it seemed like. Swords were the it thing. And easily to pretend by just grabbing a stick, grabbing a broom handle, grabbing whatever, and just running around the yard. And as a side note, I love the Hawkmen too. I mean, they were awesome. They were great characters. I mean, wings flying around, I pretended to be that too. Anyway, number two on the list, Flash Gordon. Number three might be a name you don't recognize, but the movie is a classic. And that is Alex Rogan from the movie The Last Starfighter. Released in 1984, The Last Starfighter, paired video games with awesome space combat and aliens and stuff. But the video game part. Who didn't pretend that if they would get the highest score in whatever game, someone would come searching them out? Of course, to be a celebrity or whatever, like you're the Pac-Man champion. When you're a little kid, that kind of stuff just runs through your head. But in this movie, he's not only is the champion, he is enlisted to save the universe. Now, here's a weird thing of how I pretended to be him, honestly. It wasn't necessarily him that I would pretend to be. It was the ship. I can remember running around, pew, 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 having these little star fights, if you will, on the playground. And going into I'd use the Death Blossom and just spin around and do. So, he was an awesome hero. He was someone that I wanted to be because he got thrust into this situation to save the universe, all with video games. But I actually pretended to be the shit more than anything. I remember running around and kids pretending to be X-Wings or the Millennium Falcon, or in this case, the ship from The Last Starfighter. Great movie. One that I have definitely not seen enough recently, and I need to really revisit it. But that movie meant a lot to me as a kid because of video games. It was the bridge of the movie. He kicked ass in this game, therefore he can kick ass in space. What kid doesn't want that ability? Want that opportunity? I mean, great movie, just great character. Now, number 4 on the list is a character that means so much to me now. And in different versions, equally as cool, but in this version, this is the thing that really stood out to me and cemented my love of anthropomorphic animals. And that is Disney's Robin Hood. It was re-released in theaters in 1982, and I can remember my parents taking me to see it multiple times. And I would run around the yard pretending to be Robin Hood, but not just Joe Schmo Robin Hood, the Fox Robin Hood. Now, you could say I was a furry from way back. I guess. I'll take it. That's cool. I'm down. Because I wanted to be that fox and live that fox's life with his fox maid Marion and little rabbit people running around and turtles and stuff. I mean, that's the adventure I wanted. Not just to be Robin Hood with a bow and arrow, but to be the fox Robin Hood with a bow and arrow, saving the day, hanging out in Sherwood Forest with Little John as Baloo starring as Little John, however you want to say it. But that movie still means so much to me. I mean, I still watch it religiously. I'm happy that it's on Disney Plus and I can watch it whenever I want. It just spoke to me and still speaks to me to this day. But this was a character I remember vividly pretending to be. In the front of our house, there was a huge bush, a huge evergreen bush that would get these little berries like in the winter. But it was huge. But since it grew up to the side of the house, it kind of was hollowish on the inside. So the stems were exposed on the inside of it. And I would just hang out in there and pretend that that was my Sherwood Forest. And I had a little bow and arrow, a real one, that, I probably could have gotten in so much trouble with, but I was a good kid. But I would just pretend to be him and jump out, and my bow was red. I remember jumping out, and, we had a bale of straw out in the yard, so I would shoot at that and run around, and, sticks as swords as everything else on this list. But, that one means a lot to me. Probably means as much to me as Perseus or Luke Skywalker or any of those high pantheon heroes in my book. Speaking of bows and arrows, number 5 on the list was also known to really sling some arrows, and that is John Rambo. And this isn't First Blood Rambo, this is First Blood Part 2 Rambo. This is in the thick of the Vietnam jungles, saving POWs Rambo. Now, honestly, I didn't see First Blood Part 1 until many years later. But this movie, at 1985, at 9 years old, this movie spoke to me. I mean, he was an awesome character. Save the Day was just, a lot of those action heroes back then, would just wade through bullets flying at them, not getting a scratch on them. And, the part with the bow and arrow where he just takes his time, aims, and, with explosive tipped arrows. That was awesomeness. That was the hero of a 9-year-old, of someone just going in, saving the day, rah, 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 shoot everything up. And just like with Commando on the first list, I reveled in the bloodshed. I guess it was just being a boy at that age. That was everything. That was, giddy laughter. Hee hee hee, look at that. Type of, like people are with horror movies. That's how I was with action movies. Just the blood and guts of it. just really fired me up. Now, at that time, down the street from me there was well, we called it the swamp, but it was a creek that had, what are they called, skunkweed and stuff all growing up, ferns, something that you could really get lost in. But we had the rich kids down the street had the Intertech water guns, like the Uzi or the M60. I just had cheap cap guns, but we would run around in these woods for hours pretending to be Rambo or John Matrix or G.I. Joe characters or whatever. But we spent so many hours in these woods, in this creek, just running around, blasting imaginary bad guys, and just having the greatest time ever. I mean, if I could go back, and who didn't want a survival knife after this movie? I mean, they sold them everywhere, from carnivals to convenience stores. They were everywhere, with the little whetstone with it, compass in the handle, fishing hooks and lures in there, and matches and whatever in the handle. I mean, everybody wanted one. I wanted one. I never got one. But, I mean, Rambo made that knife awesome. I mean, everyone else on this list used a sword for the most part, except Alex Rogan. His ship was his sword. Rambo's combat knife was his sword. I mean, he messed fools up with it. And, yeah, it was something I always wanted, never got. But anyway, this was just a trip down memory lane of 5 more cinematic heroes from the 80s. These are my cinematic heroes. So these were my stories, my nostalgia, my sentimental adventures, if you will. And I hope you all enjoyed it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of kids that were my age back then looked up to these people too, in some way, shape, or form. I mean, looking up to Rambo might be a strong way to say it, but he was a hero. I emulated him. I ran around pretending to be him, just like everyone else on this list. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you got something to say, please leave a comment. I love reading them, and I love getting back to everybody. And if you're new around here and you enjoyed this or any of the episodes that YouTube is recommending down here, please hit subscribe. And if you hit that little bell icon, you'll be notified whenever there's a new episode. So until next time, thanks for watching. Keep being rad and stay dorky.